Hey everybody, good afternoon and welcome back to Supply Chain and Logistics Hub. I'm Dave Hoffman. Thanks for checking out my channel. So I've posted up to 38 videos recently, and I've taught a lot of lessons, kind of gone over what's happening in the market, but I want to do something a little bit different today where I talk about, I had a potential client reach out to me and something a little different. They're looking to potentially open up a fulfillment center. And so they've been following me on LinkedIn and my YouTube channel, and they reached out to me with some questions. And I want to share those questions with you, and I also want to share with you my answers to them, okay? To kind of give you an idea of some things you need to consider. So when we think about supply chain logistics, right? Well, what's one part of supply chain, right? Warehousing, distribution centers. So how does that kind of go hand in hand? What are some things to think about, and why does it play a vital role? So let's get into it. All right, this company is looking to start an e-commerce business, okay? Essentially similar where customers can go online, they can order things, so business to consumer, okay? So we'll start to go over some of the questions they had asked, all right? And I'm gonna basically read number one, okay? If you were launching a fulfillment operation like ours from scratch with unpredictable order volumes and diverse product categories, how would you structure to balance efficiency, cost, and scalability? What's the one thing you do differently based on your past experience, okay? So when you think about this, right, it all begins with your customers and how they behave. Now, it's a little bit different with business to customer, okay? What I mean, business to consumer, excuse me. When you think about it, right, if I order something off of Amazon, odds are maybe I'm gonna order it one time. Now, Amazon has a unique function where, and my wife uses it, where it's subscribe and save. So if there's certain items that my wife orders frequently, they'll just put her on a recurring schedule, okay? And it just comes automatically, okay? But my wife's not gonna go and give a forecast like a major manufacturer will to, or a distributor to another manufacturer and say, hey, here's how much I'm expecting 3, 6, 9, 12 months. So they have an idea of how much to produce, right? It just doesn't work that way. So I'm going to read you some of my comments and notes just to share with you. So when I talked about structure, okay, starting with a flexible modular fulfillment setup, okay, they talk about zone picking for efficiency. So certain items you maybe want to have in a certain zone of the warehouse. So you're not having to go back and forth a bunch of different times into different zones, all right? You want to have automation, okay, solutions where maybe you can have conveyor belts. You can have... automatic pickers. You see machines where they have an Amazon where they're going along. Now, if you're just starting out, right, like they are, one of the questions they asked me was, well, if we bought our own versus using a 3PL. And my recommendation was, since you're new at this, it's better to go with a 3PL that plays in this space that can really be efficient and help you, and you can learn from them. So, while I'm giving them some advice about how they want to structure this warehouse, right? And in order to be organized, many warehouses have WMS, right? Warehouse management systems. And that can be very expensive. Now, they do have some solutions out there where they have service as a software. But again, I kind of think in this beginning stage, it's best for them to go down the avenue of leveraging a 3PL, okay? So the one thing I would do differently, and again, I had talked about this a little bit, but relying too much on manual labor, okay, without automating repetitive tasks, that's something that I really think in your early stages, you want to make sure you're trying to automate as much as you can to save time and money. And again, it goes back to my comment about using a 3PL to handle that, okay? So the second question they asked was, if we're dealing with multiple product categories, so if you think about maybe sporting equipment, healthcare products, furniture, whatever, those are different categories, okay? What are the most common fulfillment challenges specific to categories like consumer electronics, fashion apparel, home decor, toys, sporting goods, and health and beauty products? So these are some of the things I said you need to consider, okay? For consumer electronics, they're very valuable. They can be very expensive. You have to be concerned about theft, right? So what sort of security do you have in that warehouse to prevent theft and loss of these items? So that's one thing. Fashion and apparel. Now I'll go into a little more detail with this one. Many of you, myself included, you've ordered clothes online, sneakers, whatever, and maybe it doesn't fit. Maybe it didn't look like it was supposed to, right? So with retail items, there's going to be high returns. What sort of return policy do you have in place? What sort of reverse logistics policies or systems do you have in place? Like, how are you going to get that product from the consumer's house back into your warehouse? Okay. Home decor. So, coffee tables, couches, chairs, those sorts of things, they're big and bulky. So they're going to require, special packaging, maybe special handling. They're going to take up a lot of room in the warehouse. You might be able to stack them or put them in racks. So it's going to take up much more room on your warehouse. So how much do you really want to have in there? Okay. Toys. So toys can be very seasonal, right? You can see a spike around Christmas time, maybe Easter, something like that. But then they might tail off, right? I mean, other than, people having birthdays. But again, at Christmas, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to see a demand spike for toys. Easter, those types of things. So that's very seasonal. So how much space do you want to have allocated in that warehouse for highs and lows, okay? Sporting goods. Kind of goes in there with home decor, but for example, if someone orders a bike from Dick's, right? I'm just using as an example, right? It's going to come packaged a certain way, special handling. It's big, it's bulky, okay? And again, special handling to deliver that. Maybe they need 2 drivers to carry the box because it's so heavy. I mean, that's not the best example. Maybe it's a basketball net, right? That's big, that's bulky. They need a truck with a lift gate on it to bring down the item and roll it up the driveway. These are things you need to consider, okay? And then health and beauty products, the one thing I would say that comes to mind is maybe they're temperature sensitive, right? So that warehouse that you're going to use, maybe you need to have it, a section of it allocated to have items in there that are temperature sensitive, okay? So these are all things you're considering with your fulfillment warehouse, okay? Third question, how should we structure our inbound process to handle shipments efficiently? What should our standard operating procedures, SOP, look like from order placement to delivery, okay? So when you think about that, if I'm looking at a warehouse and they're receiving products in, let's assume for a minute that the warehouse is standard, okay? Here's your warehouse. And on this side, you have doors that are outbound for trucks to pull up to and ship out. And on this side, right, you have trucks that'll back in and bring product in. So first and foremost, you need to have an area, a staging area where you can bring product off the trucks, okay? And put in an area that's not in the way of other people within the warehouse, right? And what I have suggested is when you look at your product segmentation, what items are your top sellers, your medium sellers, and your lowest selling items, right? And you want to put the top selling items closest to the outbound doors, medium in the middle of the warehouse, and the C items, in theory, in the back part of the warehouse or the furthest part away because you're not picking them as much. So again, it all goes back to that efficiency. But on the inbound side, right, what does it look like when these products are received? What kind of paperwork do you need? So we're now transitioning over to the SOPs. What's the paperwork supposed to be? How are you entering it into your ERP systems, your WMS, okay? And then where are you allocating that within your warehouse? That's what I would look at, okay? The SOPs, the one thing I told them was they are living, breathing documents, right? They can change. They are not set in stone. So as you go through this, right, you're going to learn. But again, I go back to using a 3PL or a company like that that's really good at this, that they have SOPs, they know best practices, and then you can learn from them. When you're small and starting out, right, it doesn't always make sense to try and do everything yourself. But if you get large, like look at Amazon or some of these other larger companies, right? They do it themselves because they have the scale, they have the ability to do this stuff. They learned the processes along the way to create efficiencies, okay? So again, think about those SOPs, continue to evolve with them. Think about how you're going to store that product, how it's going to look in your system, okay? And what that process is going to look like for receiving on those trucks on the inbound side, but also on the outbound side. What are you expecting? What requirements do you have in place? What type of trailers are you going to need? What types of trucks are you need? Are you shipping full truckloads? Are you shipping LTL? Now, if it's an e-commerce, right, you're going to have a lot of LTL there in small parcels. So that kind of eliminates that. But you get what I'm saying, okay? So now let's go back to question number 4. Are there any early stage process decisions we'll likely regret 6 months from now? What are some common fix-it-later mistakes, okay? So we touched upon the SOPs, really trying to get those in place, understanding from your provider, your third-party provider, what they're doing and how that looks. But I would other say in a fulfillment center, don't underestimate the returns. So maybe what you have to do is before you start this, you want to allocate a section of that warehouse that's going to be designated for returns, okay? Because again, like I said earlier, it doesn't fit right. Customer orders something that doesn't look right. It's the wrong color. Maybe it came damaged. Whatever that reason is, you're going to have returns. So working with that third-party provider to understand, hey, we might have a lot of returns. What's that going to look like? How do you guys handle that? What sort of spacing are you going to need? Because the other thing you need to consider is some of these items that you buy, you might not be able to return. Now, they're not doing food, but if they had food, for example, they were shipping out of there, right? You know, once you buy food, it has a shelf life. There's not returns on food. But maybe they ordered a couch. A customer ordered a couch. And now they have to return it because there's a tear. It doesn't look right. Now you're bringing it back to that warehouse. Do you have enough space to store it? Okay. So making sure those SOPs are working and evolving and fine-tuning them to be efficient. And then don't underestimate those return processes. Question number 5, what are key data points we should start tracking from day one to measure fulfillment performance and catch inefficiencies early? Great question. And you can get really bogged down with a lot of data points. So I didn't want to overload them, but I gave them a few. So if you think about your order accuracy rate, the percentage of orders shipped without errors. And what I mean by that is, was it the right product, the right quantity, the right condition, the right price, the right location? We call them the 7 R's, I believe, in supply chain. I'm going back to my Apex course I learned, but those are the types of things you want to track for order accuracy, okay? Order cycle time, so the time an order is placed till the time an order is delivered. Now, with some items, they might fluctuate, but how do you keep working to try and get faster and better and more efficient to get that product to the customer as quickly as you can, okay? Inventory accuracy, right? So every so often companies will do maybe every quarter, every 6 months, every year, well, they will validate the physical inventory they have in the warehouse versus what they have in their ERP system. So how often do you want to check that to make sure there's no discrepancies? Pick and pack productivity. How many orders can your team process in an hour? So again, going back to this e-commerce business, maybe you have customers that are ordering cases of pencils for back to school. Maybe they're ordering some baseballs because baseball season come up and they come in cases or boxes or crates, whatever. So how quickly can those pickers in that warehouse pick these orders? And you want to start to time that to really understand what's the average length of time so you have an idea, right? Return rates. I know I've talked about a lot, but tracking that. What percentage of your orders that go out are coming back into your business, okay? And then cost per order. How much does it cost for that order? So customer places an order, right? You have it in your warehouse. You bought it. You have warehouse workers picking it, packing it, palletizing it, and then you're shipping it. Now, there's other costs that involve, but if you're using a 3PL, right, they're pretty much giving you a standard rate per pallet. But let's say you own that warehouse. You have to factor in the insurance, taxes, energy, figure out all those costs that go into operating that building and see if you can break it out by pallet and then break it down even further by case to see what it's really costing you, okay, and if you're making money. So the last question, how would you decide between an in-house warehouse setup versus partnering with a 3PL? And again, I know I've talked about this a lot, but to be fair, you don't know what you don't know. And when you're first starting out, it makes a lot of sense. So if you've ever watched Shark Tank, some of these companies that are first starting out, they'll go to these sharks, these investors, and they have relationships with distributors or contract manufacturers that are really good at this. They're really efficient, and they can just do it better and faster. So you heard me talk about using 3PL warehouses. Again, they're in this space. This is all they do. They're very knowledgeable. So I would suggest vetting them, talking to them, sharing with them your business model, your plan, finding out what other types of customers they have, getting references, and then making the best decision you possibly can, right? So those are just some of the basic various questions that were brought to me the other day from a possible customer. And again, nothing's easy, but having the right expert to kind of guide you, to give you this feedback, things you're not thinking of, makes all the difference in the world. So thanks for watching the channel, guys. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and I'll see you next time.